A king is hiding in a swamp. Right now, winter 878. Somewhere in the wetlands of Somerset, crouched in the cold and the mud, is the last free king in England. And he is running for his life. A few weeks ago, he had a hall, a crown, an army. Then a Viking warlord named Guthrum did the one thing nobody does. He attacked in the dead of winter when no army is supposed to be moving. He hit the king's stronghold at Chippenham in the dark, and he took everything. The king didn't lose a battle, he lost a country in a night. And this is the whole map of England now. 13 years ago, there were 4 kingdoms here. 3 are already gone, conquered, or wearing a Viking collar. 1 is left, Wessex, and the King of Wessex is lying in a bog, listening for hooves. Here's the rule of this war, the rule that's held for 13 straight years. The Great Army does not lose. When they win, a kingdom dies. When their enemy wins, they just shrug, pull back, and come again next spring. Their enemy has to win every single time. They only have to win once, and they just did. So, by every rule that has ever applied to this war, it's over. Except, this is the part of the story nobody saw coming, because that man in the mud is about to do something no king, no army, no kingdom has managed in 13 years of getting torn apart. He's going to make the Great Army lose. The question is how? How? Do you go from a swamp with nothing to beating the most feared army in Europe in a matter of months? First, kill the myth, because you've probably heard one version of this. The story goes that Alfred, hiding out, takes shelter in a peasant woman's hut. She's baking cakes, she tells the stranger to watch them, and the broken king gets so lost in his own head that he lets them burn and gets shouted at by a woman who has no clue she's yelling at her king. Lovely story, almost certainly invented. It's not an Asser, the man who actually knew Alfred and wrote his life. It turns up about 100 years later, tucked into the life of a saint, so keep it as a campfire tale. It is not why Alfred lived. This is why. He didn't just hide in the marsh, he fortified it. There's a patch of dry ground buried in the Somerset wetlands. Athelney. Water on every side. One way in. For a small band being hunted by a bigger one, it is close to perfect, which, if you saw part 1, is the exact trick the Vikings themselves had been using for years. Their island, their rules. Now Alfred's using it against them. And from that island, he does the unthinkable. He goes on the offensive. Little raids, fast, mean, gone before anyone can react. Hit a Viking patrol, melt back into the reeds. He keeps his men fed, he keeps the enemy nervous. And he keeps something else alive, something Guthrum can't reach out here in the water. The word that the king is not dead. That's the whole game right now. Not Alfred's sword, Alfred's name. As long as the king is breathing and free, Wessex isn't beaten. It's just holding its breath. And Alfred is counting the weeks until spring. Here's the first move. And everything rides on it. Because a king with no army is just a man in a swamp with a fancy word in front of his name. Alfred needs the fyrd. That's the West Saxon levy, free landowners who grab a spear when the king calls and go home to their farms when it's done, and Guthrum's winter ambush was built precisely to make sure. That call could never go out. Hit in January, scatter the leaders, grab the heartland, make the fyrd impossible to gather. So Alfred waits. And this is the hard part, the waiting. Too early, and a handful of men show up and die with him. Too late, and Guthrum's dug in forever, and the country's made its peace with the Danes. He picks his moment. 7th week after Easter, early May, he sends out the call. One instruction, come to Egbert's stone. And here's a small, honest thing. We don't actually know where Egbert's stone was. The spot is lost. A standing stone somewhere in the west, and history misplaced it. But we know what happened there. They came. Somerset came. Wiltshire came. Part of Hampshire came. The men who hadn't fled the country, hadn't cut a deal with the Danes, hadn't written off a king who'd spent the winter hiding in a bog. They picked up their spears and they walked to a rock in the middle of nowhere on the word of a man half of them must have assumed was already dead. And Asser, who talked to people who were actually there, describes the moment they lay eyes on him. They're overjoyed. The king they'd buried in their heads is standing right in front of them, alive, ready. That muster is the hinge of this entire story, not the battle. This, No men at the stone, no battle at all, just a lonely king and the end of England. But they came. And for the first time since that night at Chippenham, Alfred has an army. He doesn't sit on it. He marches straight at Guthrum before the Danes can pull their full strength together. Move 1. Get your strike in first. They collide at a place the old sources call Edington. You'd call it Edington in Wiltshire. And forget the movies. There are no heroic duels here, no clever flanking sweeps. A Dark Age battle is a shoving match. Two walls of men, shields locked rim to rim, spears stabbing through the cracks, each side leaning its whole body weight into the other and pushing. That's it. No genius. Just muscle and nerve and the simple question of who cracks first. Asser tells us how Alfred fought it. Compact shield wall, the whole Viking army in front of him. And he holds. For a long time. Two exhausted walls grinding against each other under a gray sky, and Alfred's line will not break. Theirs breaks. Somewhere in that grinding, a gap, a tired arm, one stretch of men losing their nerve, Guthrum's wall comes apart. And the second a shield wall breaks, the battle's already over. Because now it isn't a fight, it's a hunt. The Danes run. And here's where you watch Alfred prove he actually understands this war. For 13 years, the English would win a fight, then politely let the Vikings jog off to regroup and come back nastier. Every time. Alfred does not do that. He runs them down. All the way back to their fortress at Chippenham, the same fortress they stole from him in the snow. And he doesn't attack it. He wraps his army around it. And he waits. 2 weeks. Nothing goes in. Nobody comes out. The most terrifying army in England, the one that ate 3 kingdoms, is now trapped behind its own walls, freezing and starving. And then it happens. The thing that has not happened one single time in this entire war. The great army begs for peace. Stand where Alfred is standing for a second. You've got them. The men who torched your kingdom, butchered your people, ran you into a swamp. They're on the far side of that wall, starving, and they are begging. Everybody watching knows the ending. Storm the walls, kill Guthrum, leave a pile of Viking dead so tall that nobody tries this again for a century. Alfred does the exact opposite. And this is the move that actually ends the war. He takes the surrender. He takes hostages, as many as he wants, and gives back none, which tells you precisely who holds the power now. The Danes swear to get out of Wessex, and then they swear to something nobody predicted. Guthrum agrees to be baptized, to become a Christian. Weeks later, at a place called Aller, right by Athelney, it happens. The pagan warlord who took everything Alfred owned kneels down in the water, and Alfred stands over him as his godfather. Guthrum walks out with a new Christian name, Ethelstan. And then, at a royal estate at Wedmore, the two of them spend 12 days together, feasting, trading gifts. The king and the monster who spent years trying to erase each other, breaking bread at the same table. Why? Why let the monster live, and then throw him a banquet? Because Alfred has figured out the thing his enemies never did. You cannot kill your way out of this war. He's watched 3 kingdoms try it and die. Kill Guthrum, and some hungrier warlord just takes his place with a fresh grudge, but turn Guthrum into a Christian king, bound by an oath, carrying a name Alfred gave him, penned behind a border Alfred drew, and you've pulled off the impossible. You've made the great army stop, and it works. That summer, the Danes march out of Wessex, exactly as sworn. They go to Cirencester, then east into East Anglia, where Guthrum settles down, rules as a king, and dies 12 years later, of old age, in bed, not on a blade. Alfred didn't just beat the great army, he baptized it. But Alfred is nobody's fool. A baptism isn't a wall. An oath is only worth as much as the man swearing it. So he makes something that can't get up and walk away. A border. There's a treaty between the two of them that still survives, and it does something staggering. It cuts England in half. A line running up the Thames, along the River Lee, up to Bedford, then straight along the old Roman road called Watling Street. Southwest of that line, Alfred's, English. Northeast of it, Guthrum's, Danish. Norse law, Norse custom, Norse settlers pouring in by the boatload. This is the land history we'll call the Danelaw. A Scandinavian half of England, its border inked into a document, and its fingerprints still all over the map today. Every town near there ending in by or Thorpe, a pile of the plainest words you use in English. That line is where it all begins. But look at what Alfred just traded. He gave away half a country he didn't control anyway. The north and east were already lost. And in return, he got something you can't buy. A real border. Recognized, defensible, and time. And Alfred is about to use that time better than any king of this whole bloody age. Because Edington bought Wessex a year, what he builds next is designed to buy it forever. Here's the problem Alfred actually sits down to solve. Not, how do I win a battle? He's done that. It's the deeper one, the one that's been bleeding England out for 13 years. The Vikings are faster than you. They come off the sea, they hit inland before anyone can gather, they smash a target, and they're gone before your army's even awake. You cannot defend a whole kingdom against that. By the time your fyrd assembles, the raid's over and the ships are already specks on the horizon. Unless you change the entire shape of your defense, which is what he does. Move 2. The burghs. Alfred throws a net of fortified towns across Wessex, around 30 of them, and they are not scattered at random. They're spaced so that no spot in the whole kingdom is more than a long day's march, roughly 20 miles, from a walled refuge. Winchester, Wallingford, Cricklade. Some are old Roman walls patched back up, some are raised from bare ground, and there's a document that survives called the burghal heightage, which is basically the cheat sheet behind the entire system. It lists every burr and it does the math. How much land has to feed each fort? How many men that land owes to man the walls? Historians cracked the formula. It works out to roughly 4 men for every few feet of rampart. This isn't a wish list of forts. It's a funded, staffed, permanent defense grid, worked out down to the footstep. And just like that, the Vikings' superpower, speed, stops working. They land, expecting a soft, open countryside. Instead, there's a garrisoned fortress every 20 miles, packed with people who got behind the walls in time, and an army that can now gather safely inside the defenses instead of getting caught in the open and butchered. Then he fixes the army itself. The old fyrd had one fatal bug. It went home. Men had farms, harvests, families. They'd serve, then leave, and the Vikings simply learned to wait them out. So Alfred splits it down the middle. Half the fyrd fights while the other half works the land. Then they swap. Now there is always an army standing, all year round. You cannot wait out a force that never stands down. And then he goes after their last, deepest advantage, the sea itself. Alfred orders new ships, bigger ones. The Chronicle says nearly twice the length of the Viking boats, some with 60 oars or more, built to his own design. This is the seed of an English navy. The whole radical idea that you don't sit and wait for the raiders to land. You go out and meet them on the water. Is it clunky at first? Absolutely. And the Chronicle is refreshingly honest that the early runs are a mess, but the intent is a revolution. Kill the storm before it reaches the beach. Walls, a standing army, a fleet. Alfred has taken every single edge the Vikings ever had, surprise, speed, the sea, and built a wall against each one. Now we find out if it holds. The 890s. It comes back. A fresh great army. Hundreds of ships. A hardened warlord named Hastein, crossing from the continent. Hungry, confident, expecting the soft England his father's generation carved up like a roast. He finds a completely different country. This time the Vikings strike inland, and the people are already gone, safe behind walls. They try to hold ground, and an English army is on them fast, and it does not go home. They split up to raid, and they run face first into burrs. They move up a river, and Alfred's men are already sitting on the river. The whole machine turns, gear by gear, exactly the way it was drawn up. The raiders win a skirmish here and there, and can turn none of it into anything. You can't live off a countryside that keeps locking itself away behind stone. They try for 4 years. 4 years, and they get nowhere. And around 896, the Chronicle records the ending, and it's almost an anticlimax, which is the entire point. The Great Army just gives up. It comes apart. Some drift off into the Danelaw to settle with the older Danes. Some sail back across the sea to hunt somewhere easier. There's no glorious last stand. There doesn't need to be. The system beat them. Wessex has become a nut they cannot crack, so they stop trying to crack it. Sit on how complete that flip is. One generation back, a Viking army strolled through English kingdoms like wet paper. Now a Viking army hurls itself at Wessex for 4 straight years and simply falls apart out of sheer grinding failure. and the man who built the thing that broke them started face down in a swamp. Alfred dies in 899, in bed, King of Wessex, and something bigger than that. Around this time, the Chronicle starts reaching for a grander title, King of the Anglo-Saxons, because what he saved wasn't one kingdom. It was the idea of one. Look at the whole distance of it. A hunted man, alone in the reeds, the last free king on an island getting swallowed whole, and this is what he leaves on the table when he goes. A defended kingdom, a written, recognized border with the Danes, a ring of fortified towns, a lot of which are towns you can still walk through today, their streets still following the grid he chalked out 1100 years ago. A standing army, the first bones of a navy, and an heir who was watching all of it. Because here's the thing Alfred didn't do. He saved Wessex, but he never took back the Danelaw. Half of England is still Danish the day he dies. That other half, the long, grinding reconquest, the fight to drag the Danelaw back into an English kingdom that falls to Alfred's son Edward, and, astonishingly for this age, to Alfred's daughter, Ethelfled, who ends up ruling Mercia outright and leading armies into the field herself. But that, how the children of the king from the swamp took back the half of England their father never could, is a whole story of its own. For now, hold on to this one thing. The Great Army broke 3 kingdoms and came within a single winter of breaking the 4th. In all that time, it met exactly one man who refused to lose the way everyone else lost. A man who ran when he had to, waited when he had to, and then, out of a swamp, built a machine the raiders had no answer for. Everybody remembers that the Vikings came. The only reason there was still an England left to remember it is him.